is religion.
We have witches with religion also.
Even though you some of you don't recognize the traditionalists, they also have their religion and they have their
right priests are there. Good morning, Amechi, once again, and nice to be here. And let's start from where the INEC really hit on the primary or the foundation, the polling unit result. Amechi, you remember I was on the street during the election in February 25. Early morning, you were in the studio when I was reporting people queued and waited 4 a.m. at the polling unit waiting for the INEC official to upload the result. And it's good to hear that INEC recognizes the result from the polling unit. Going into the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, those are the issues that INEC will be, the tribunal will be contending with. And it's good, yeah, well, the tribunal is like the clearinghouse for all the witnesses, the ballot box, whatever, before going to the next level of appeal for the governorship. And it's good we have those stages, as Steve has said, because the complex society, different interests and different views, different opinions. So if the clearinghouse has done the whole thing, going to the Supreme Court will just be, oh, what did you clear from the clearinghouse appeal? So going forward, I think it's a good development for Nigerian democracy. The Osun election has given us maybe a leap to what we'll be expecting in the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal and the Governorship Election Tribunal across the states, and even the National Assembly Election Petition Tribunal. But let me quickly congratulate Adeleke for the victory he has achieved, but it's a sad one for me because Amechi, we cannot continue to allow the court determine our leaders. We cannot continue to allow the judiciary be the one to tell you who your leader is after you have made up your mind. You have queued for several months to obtain your voter's card. You have queued for several hours to vote and to determine your leader, and it will end up in the court to determine who your leader is. It is not good for our democracy. I know other countries have these issues also, which they take to court after the voting process, but we must begin to know that I, as a voter, want to elect my leader from the polling unit, not from the court. And let's look at it even. How much is being spent? Nobody has looked at it. I think the civil society should wake up. How much is being spent in the judicial process after the election? You pay these lawyers. Some candidates have about 20 lawyers. Mm-hmm. You have chambers, several chambers.
To question the source of the payment.
The payment.
Whether it's the state.
Is it free will? Is it pro bono?
From private pockets.
Good. So we need to know. And Atiku has about 20 lawyers in his coffers. And Obi has about 20 lawyers there. Tinubu has about 20 lawyers. Even the Action Alliance that we're talking about, they have some few lawyers that came around. How much are they being paid? How much is being spent? We talked about, is it the money they are spending, is it part of the election campaign spending that the Electoral Act talked about? So these are things we need to investigate. We need to interrogate it. Okay. Are we not overburdening our economy? What do you call it? The electoral process by waiting and doing all whatnot, because we know that the thing will get to the judiciary. It's not.
Abuli asked Teve whether he's a Christian. Whether you are tested to the fact that we are a multi-religious society. And one thing about religion is that they believe in God. And all of them are in unity. That God is unchangeable.
No, depend on the God. Small letter G.
God is unchangeable. It's the same yesterday, it's the same today, it's the same tomorrow. God is divine in the sense that he has been consistent. God has been consistent in dealings. And I always tell people, apart from God, the next most consistent institution should be the judiciary. Because consistency shows straightforwardness.
I think it should be next to God.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
I think God is the ultimate.
He's ultimate. Or that's be extraterrestrial. Within this earth, the most consistent should be the judiciary. Over time, the principles of law have not changed. They have remained consistent. The principles of law, including right of self-defense, right of defense, and right to be heard, they have remained constant. Yes, some things may change. You can change the administration of criminal justice. You can say, before now we are not admitting video evidence. Because of technology, let's admit video evidence. Those things change. We can say we have a BVAS, we have IREF. You can incorporate it. But the fundamentals, the principles remain constant. And justices or judgments are supposed to flow from these natural principles of law that are unchangeable. So when a judge at the High Court violates those principles and an appeal court tries to amend it, if you take a case straight to the Supreme Court and they understand that they are learned, not just learned, they are officers in the temple of justice, and their judgment will become law, and their judgment will say whether a man should live or not live. That's why I said judicial should be consistent. Apart from God, they can decide to take your life if the state accuses you of murder and wants the full capital punishment. So when we see a consistent judiciary, everybody goes home and say, as the law pleases. So if they maintain that line, if at the lower court they abandon principles of justice, we hold those judges to account. We interrogate the judgment. We may disagree with it.
Have you heard those judges to account, Amechi? The judge that said
interrogate those judges.
Oyetola won. I think the Federal High Court, the court said the tribunal said Oyetola won. Then he came to appeal, and appeal gave it to him. And from appeal, Oyetola challenged it again, and he went to Supreme. So are we holding the judges at the tribunal responsible for wrong justice, miscarriage of justice, or for miscarriage of justice?
And see the justification for those judges.
I think that should be consequences.
And interrogate it. It also, apart from helping the judges themselves, who may have, out of ignorance or indeed not being experienced, it will help them, it will help the electoral jurisprudence, it will help the nation, it will help everybody.
Clearly, those who feel, and there's a process for that. If you feel, a judge,
miscarriage of
judgment, miscarriage of justice, and all of that, the National Judicial Council is there for you to put a petition. But what you cannot take away is that there is.
That's what they call it, miscarriage of justice. And we have seen instances where the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court will condemn judgments, telling us that these are pure miscarriage of justice, judgment delivered at the lower court.
So what happened to the judges that miscarried this
That's
justice?
the question.
There are bases for it. Even if you go to the National Judicial Council, not every petition that is written that is successful.
It could be by error.
It could be by an honest error. You must provide the evidence, as it were. And don't forget, just like the lawmakers have immunity on the floor, that they can say what they will say and get away with it. Also in court, you can also, within the confines of those proceedings, covered by that immunity. Moving forward. I mentioned one other thing.
For example, one of the two majority judges in the court tribunal for Adeleke's case said he could not, therefore, go low, and that's Buga. And that's Buga to claiming victory, that it was out of place. But the Supreme Court said no, he cannot, but they didn't add it. But that was exactly how that judge coined it. The appeal court and the Supreme Court didn't say so. But the interpretation is that he can not only dance and Buga, he can also do unavailable, he can do calm down, but he can dance to anything, to the government house.
It's for the Adeleke to know that work has started, and work has started seriously.
And Amechi, when you go to court or the tribunal and all of that, you must prove. You must bring, and there's what the law says, substantial compliance. And that is what the Supreme Court, by virtue of its pronouncement, is saying. Once there is substantial compliance, it can stand. Take the case, for instance, the issue of Adeleke, what's his name now? The Oyetola alleged that there was overvoting in 774 polling units across 10 local governments. But when eventually the court saved through this and all of that, what did the Supreme Court say? He said you have only been able to prove your case in 6 out of 774 polling units.
And the numbers are insignificant.
Insignificant to change the outcome of
So he said 700 and he only provided evidence for 6.
The court said he was able to prove the case is only 6.
So the takeaway as you file election petition case at the Tribunal, Court of Appeal, or Supreme Court, at least starting from the Court of First Instance, the High Court, you must make sure that the result sheet delivered at the polling unit is tendered as evidence. Because as the results are being announced and recorded, there's a column for the presiding officer to sign, there's a column for all party agents to sign, and all that. And after, every party agent is given a copy. And after, every other person, a public copy is also pasted at the polling unit for you to view. It is that document that the Supreme Court said yesterday is the primary evidence to prove overvoting or whatever.
And
others
the voter register
could be secondary.
The voter register,
is
the
also
BVAS, the IREF is secondary.
So we have all these things to check our processes. Amechi, it baffles some of us why we are still where we are. If you have these copies collected by the agents, a copy pasted there, how comes the results are still being contested? Which means some persons doctor these results. So I hope the parties will not bring different results in a particular polling.
It's not left for the court. If the standard as an evidence, the defendant may contest it, and it's now a decision left for the court to be taken as to whether it will be admitted as evidence
and that's
on the strength of that.
And that's the reason why at some point there are going to be some consolidation of these cases because of the evidence emanating from the same process, the same polling unit, and all of that before judgment is made. The same way the issue of the motion for live coverage has now been consolidated for a decision to be made.
Okay, let's hear from you. Let's hear from some of the emails that you sent.